Right, so before we go to Ilos here, I thought it would be a good time to catch up on our Codex. No, other button, this one. Because there's quite a few new entries both in the primary and the secondary Codex. So let's get right to it, shall we? Nothing new in the Council races, but in the sapient creatures. Here we go.
After the Geth secure a location, they round up and impale dead and living bodies on mechanical spikes. The spikes rapidly transform these victims into withered husks, extracting water and trace minerals, and replacing them with cybernetics. The cybernetics reanimate the lifeless flesh and tissue, transforming the bodies into mindless killing machines. Some Alliance soldiers refer to the husk-generating spikes as dragon's teeth, a reference to the mythological berserkers who sprang up from the earth wherever the teeth of the dragon Eris were planted. Dragon's teeth and husks bear little resemblance to other pieces of Geth technology. No one is sure why a synthetic race would bother to drain the minuscule amount of recoverable resources from organic corpses, though the value of reusing them as shock troops is obvious. Thresher Moths are subterranean carnivores that spend their entire lives eating, or searching for something to eat. Threshers reproduce via spores that can lie dormant for millennia, yet are robust enough to survive prolonged periods in deep space and atmospheric re-entry. As a result, thresher spores appear on many worlds, spread by previous generations of space travelers. The body of a thresher never entirely leaves the ground. Only the head and tentacles erupt from the earth to attack. In addition to physical attacks, threshers have the ability to project toxic chemicals and emit bursts of infrasound as a shockwave weapon. The Alliance first encountered threshers on the colony of Akuz in 2177. After contact was lost with the Pioneer team, Marine units were deployed to investigate. The shore parties were set upon by hungry threshers, and nearly the entire assault force was killed. Alliance forces recommend engaging threshers with vehicle-mounted heavy weapons. Varren are omnivores with a preference for living prey. Originally native to the Krogan homeworld of Tuchanka, they are, like most life from Tuchanka, savage, clannish, and consummate survivors. They are pack hunters when vulnerable prey is readily available, and become scavengers when outnumbered or outclassed. Their supreme adaptability, vicious demeanor, and rapid breeding cycle have made them ubiquitous and dangerous pests on many worlds. Virtually everywhere the Krogan have been, Varren infestations have followed, wreaking havoc with the native ecology. The Krogan have had a love-hate relationship with Varren for millennia, alternately fighting them for territory and embracing them as treasured companions. To this day, Krogan raise them as beasts of war. One of the common subgenus of Varren has metallic silver scales, leading to the rather unusual nickname, fish dogs. The Citadel is an ancient deep space station, presumably constructed by the Protheans. Since the Prothean extinction, numerous species have come. Citadel space is an unofficial term referring to any region of space controlled by a species that acknowledges the authority of the Citadel Council. At first glance, it appears this territory encompasses most of the galaxy. In reality, however, less than 1% of the stars have been explored. Even Mass Effect FTL drive is slow relative to the volume of the galaxy. Empty space and systems without suitable drive discharge sites are barriers to exploration. Only the mass relays allow ships to jump hundreds of light years in an instant, the key to expanding across an otherwise impassable galaxy. Whenever a new relay is activated, the destination system is rapidly developed. From that hub, FTL drive is used to expand to nearby star clusters. The result is a number of densely developed clusters, thinly spread across the vast expanse of space, connected by the mass relay network. The home world and capital of humanity is entering a new golden age. The resource wealth of a dozen settled colonies and 100 industrial outposts flows back to Earth, fueling great works of industry, commerce, and art. The great cities are greening, as arcology skyscrapers and telecommuting allow more efficient use of land. Earth is still divided among nation-states, though all are affiliated beneath the overarching banner of the Systems Alliance. While every human enjoys a longer and better life than ever, the gap between rich and poor widens daily. Advanced nations have eliminated most genetic disease and pollution. Less fortunate regions have not progressed beyond 20th century technology and are often smog-choked, overpopulated slums. Sea levels have risen 2 meters in the last 200 years, and violent weather is common due to environmental damage inflicted during the late 21st century. The past few decades, however, have seen significant improvement due to recent technological advances.
Ah yes, the old we're gonna save climate change by just inventing our way out of it.
Pharos is a habitable world in the Attican Beta Cluster. 2/3 of the habitable surface is covered with the ruins of a crumbling Prothean megatropolis. In the millennia since the Prothean extinction, the ruins have been repeatedly picked over by looters many times. Pharos was considered a poor prospect for colonization, as little open ground remains for agriculture. The only sizable freshwater sources are the poles, which are tapped by the decaying Prothean aqueduct systems. The dead cities, while in good condition considering their antiquity, are of uncertain stability. Ground level is congested by a dozen meters of fallen debris, and the air is fouled by dust. In 2178, the Human Exogeny Corporation announced its intention to place a permanent colony on Pharos to thoroughly explore the ruins. The pioneer settlement was placed on the upper levels of several intact skyscrapers, using the surviving Prothean aqueducts and rooftop hydroponic gardens to support the population.
Right, so all of that's ruins from the Protheans. That makes sense. Colony only established a couple of years ago, though. Vermeer.
Vermeer is a lush world located on the frontier of the Attican Traverse. Its vast seas and orbital position on the inner life zone have created a wide equatorial band of humid, tropical terrain. Only the political instability of the region has impeded efforts at colonization. Many times the Citadel has opened negotiations to settle Vermeer with various criminal gangs and petty dictatorships in the nearby terminus systems. All fell apart due to internal power shifts within the opposing parties. The Citadel has written off the colonization of Vermeer as impossible without significant political change. The terminus powers themselves are unlikely to ever settle Vermeer. Most lack the resources to support settlement of a virgin world, finding it more expedient to steal from their neighbors than build for themselves. Faster-than-light drives use element zero cores to reduce the mass of the ship, allowing higher rates of acceleration. This effectively raises the speed of light within the mass effect field, allowing high-speed travel with negligible relativistic time dilation effects. Starships still require conventional thrusters, chemical rockets, commercial fusion torch, economy ion engine, or military anti-proton drive, in addition to the FTL drive core. With only a core, a ship has no motive power. The amount of ESO and power required for a drive increases exponentially to the mass being moved and the degree it is being lightened. Very massive ships, or very high speeds, are prohibitively expensive. If the field collapses while the ship is moving at faster than light speed, the effects are catastrophic. The ship is snapped back to sublight velocity, the enormous excess energy shed in the form of lethal Cherenkov radiation. Larger warships are generally classified in one of 4 weights. Frigates are small, fast ships used for scouting and screening of larger vessels. Frigates often operate in wolf-pack flotillas. Cruisers are middleweight combatants, faster than dreadnoughts and more heavily armed than frigates. Cruisers are the standard patrol unit and often lead frigate flotillas. Dreadnoughts are kilometer-long capital ships mounting heavy, long-range firepower. They are only deployed for the most vital missions. Carriers are dreadnought-sized vessels that also carry large numbers of fighters. Smaller vessels are almost exclusively used in a support role to the warships during combat. Fighters are one-man craft used to perform close-range attacks on enemy ships. Interceptors are one-man craft optimized for destroying opposing fighters. The Normandy is a prototype starship developed by the Human Systems Alliance with the assistance of the Citadel Council. It is optimized for scouting and reconnaissance missions in unstable regions using state-of-the-art stealth technology. For most ships, the heat generated through standard operations is easily detectable against the absolute zero background of space. The Normandy, however, is able to temporarily sink this heat within the hull. Combined with refrigeration of the exterior hull, the ship can travel undetected for hours or drift passively for days of covert observation. This is not without risk. The stored heat must eventually be radiated, or it will build to levels capable of cooking the crew alive. Another component of the stealth system is the Normandy's revolutionary Tantalus drive, a mass effect core twice the standard size. The Tantalus drive generates mass concentrations that the Normandy falls into, allowing it to move without the use of heat-emitting thrusters. Sovereign is the flagship of the rogue Spectre's Sarin. An enormous dreadnought larger than any other ship in any known fleet, it is crewed with both Geth and Krogan. At 2 kilometers long, its spinal-mounted main gun is likely capable of penetrating another dreadnought's kinetic barriers with a single shot. How Sarin acquired this incredible warship is unknown. The prevailing opinion is that Sovereign is a Geth construct, while others believe it is a Prothean relic. Its design, however, hints at a more alien and mysterious origin. The attack on Eden Prime demonstrated Sovereign's ability to generate mass effect fields powerful enough to land on a planetary surface. This implies it has a massive Element Zero core and the ability to generate staggering amounts of power. Ship mobility dominates space combat. The primary objective is to align the mass accelerator along the bow with the opposing vessel's broadside. Battles typically play out as artillery duels, fought at ranges measured in thousands of kilometers, though assaults through defended mass relays often occur at knife fight ranges, as close as a few dozen kilometers. Most ship-to-ship engagements are skirmishes between patrol vessels of cruiser weight and below, with dreadnoughts and carriers only deployed in full-scale fleet actions. Battles in open space are short and often inconclusive, as the weaker opponent typically disengages. Once a ship enters FTL flight, the combat is effectively over. There are no sensors capable of tracking them or weapons capable of damaging them. The only way to guarantee an enemy will stand and fight is to attack a location they have a vested interest in, such as a settled world or a strategically important mass relay. The Mako infantry fighting vehicle was designed for the System Alliance's frigates. Though the interior is cramped, an M35 is small enough to be carried in the cargo bay and easily deployed on virtually any world. With its turreted 155mm mass accelerator and coaxially mounted machine gun, the Mako can provide a fire team with weapon support as well as mobility. Since Alliance Marines may be required to fight on any world, the Mako is environmentally sealed and equipped with microthrusters for use on low-gravity planetoids. The Mako is powered by a sealed hydrogen-oxygen fuel cell and includes a small Element Zero core. While not large enough to nullify the vehicle's mass, the core can reduce it enough to be safely airdropped. When used in conjunction with thrusters, it also allows the Mako to extricate itself from difficult terrain. Combat hard suits use a dual-layer system to protect the wearer. Metagel is a common medicinal salve used by paramedics, EMTs, and military personnel. It combines several useful applications: a local anesthetic, disinfectant, and clotting agent all in one. Once applied, the gel is designed to grip tight to flesh until subjected to a frequency of ultrasound. It is sealable against liquids, most notably blood, as well as contaminants and gases. The gel is a genetically engineered bioplasm created by the CERTA Foundation, a medical technology megacorp based on Earth. Technically, Metagel violates Council laws against genetic engineering, but to date, it has proved far too useful to ban.
Wait, we've had this Metagel thing before, right? But it was flashing. Okay, that was primary entries. There is so many secondary entries though. It's gonna take a while, I'm pretty sure. We read the personal history, unless there's something new. No. Bring down the sky. This is from the DLC mission. Human cultures remain linguistically divided. Some converse in Spanish, others in Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, etc. Every alien race has their own equally broad panoply of languages and dialects. Most individuals know only their mother tongue and rely on machine translation. Modern portable computers allow anyone with a few hundred credits of equipment to enjoy seamless real-time translation of alien languages, courtesy of handheld PDAs, computers in clothing or jewelry, or subdermal implants. Without fast and accurate translation, galactic trade and culture could not exist. Governments provide subsidized software updated through the public extranet on the fly, often as users approach spaceport customs facilities. Even the Batarians, who isolated themselves from galactic society nearly 2 decades ago, take pains to provide up-to-date glossaries and linguistic rules, though most suspect this is only so they can continue exporting propaganda. That's right, our enemies are always exporting propaganda. We are... I don't know. Just making a case for ourselves. It is still considered broad-minded and practical to be able to speak without machine aid. Children often take courses in alien language, and most races can speak with the simplified artificial traded tongue with little difficulty. Some species must rely on machine translation to interact with the rest of the galaxy. Henna, for example, cannot reproduce the spoken language of any humanoid species, and other races cannot reproduce henna bioluminescence without mechanical aid. Newly discovered or obscure races don't have machine translation available until the linguists have had time to study them. Council races. Ooh, Asari biology. Asari have a robust cellular regenerative system. While they do not heal faster than other species, Asari are known to reach 1,000 years of age. Although Asari have one gender, they are not asexual. An Asari provides 2 copies of her own genes to her offspring. The second set is altered in a unique process called melding. During melding, an Asari consciously attunes her nervous system to her partner's, sending and receiving electrical impulses directly through the skin. The partner can be another Asari or an alien of either gender. Effectively, the Asari and her partner briefly become one unified nervous system. This unique means of reproduction is the reason Asari are talented biotics. Their evolved ability to consciously control nerve impulses is very similar to biotic training. Asari believe that their offspring acquire the best abilities of the father from the melded genes, but evidence is anecdotal. Asari pass through 3 climactic life stages, marked by biochemical and physiological changes. The maiden stage begins at birth and is marked by the drive to explore and experience. Most young Asari are curious and restless. The matron stage of life begins around the age of 350, though it can be triggered earlier if the individual melds frequently. What? This is some... you know, questionable morals when applied to humans at least. This period is marked by a desire to settle in one area and raise children. The Matriarch Stage begins around 700 or earlier if the individual melds rarely. Matriarchs become active in their communities as sages and counselors, dispensing wisdom from centuries of experience. So not melding a lot makes you wise earlier, I see. While each stage of life is marked by strong biological tendencies, individuals do make unexpected life choices. For example, there are maidens who stay close to home rather than explore, matrons who would rather work than build a family, and matriarchs who have no interest in community affairs. Who would have thought? They're still individuals. Culture. Because of their long lifespan, Asari tend to have a long view, not common in other races. When they encounter a new species or situation, the Asari are more comfortable with an extended period of passive observation and study than immediate action. They are unfazed that some of their investments or decisions may not pay off for decades or centuries. Matriarchs can seem to make incomprehensible decisions, but their insight is evident when their carefully laid plans come to fruition. In interstellar relations, this long view manifests in an unspoken policy of centrism. Oh my god. The Asari instinctively seek to maintain stable balances of economic, political, and military power. This is some enlightened political shit the writers are heaving on us here. Traditionally, Asari spread their influence through cultural domination and intellectual superiority. They invite new species of advanced development to join the galactic community, knowing that their ideals and beliefs will inevitably influence the existing culture. Asari government. The Asari came late to the concept of world government. For centuries, their homeworld of Thessia was dotted with loose confederacies of great republican cities. The closest earthly equivalent would be the ancient Mediterranean city-states. Since the Asari culture values consensus and accommodation, there was little impetus to form larger principalities. Rather than hoard resources, the Asari bartered freely. Rather than attack one another over differing philosophies, they sought to understand one another. Only in the information age did the city-states grow close. Communication over the internet evolved into an electronic democracy. Asari have no politicians or elections, but a freewheeling, all-inclusive legislature that citizens can participate in at will. Policy debates take place at all hours of the day, in official chat rooms and forums moderated by specially programmed virtual intelligences. All aspects of policy are open to plebiscite at any time. In any given debate, the Asari tend to lend the most credence to the opinions of any matriarchs present, nearly always deferring to the experience of these millennia-old wise women. Achieving consensus through public debate may take too long in a crisis. In cases where prompt decisive action is required, the Asari defer to the wisdom of local matriarchs. That seems like a fucking nightmarish dystopia. Not because I don't like it in principle, but man, can you imagine government via Facebook or Twitter? Asari military doctrine. The Asari military resembles a collection of tribal warrior bands with no national structure. Each community organizes its own unit as the locals see fit and elect a leader to command them. Units from populous cities are large and well equipped, while those from farm villages may be only a few women with small arms. There is no uniform. Everyone wears what they like. The Asari military is not an irregular militia, however. Those who serve are full-time professionals. The average Asari huntress is in the maiden stage of her life and has devoted 20 to 30 years to studying the martial arts. Asari choose to be warriors at a young age, and their education from that point is dedicated to sharpening the mind and body for that sole purpose. When they retire, they possess an alarming proficiency for killing. Huntresses fight individually or in pairs, depending on the tactics preferred in their town. One-on-one, a huntress is practically unbeatable, possessing profound tactical insight, a hunter's eye, and a dancer's grace and alacrity. Biotics are common enough that some capability is a requirement to be trained as a huntress. Lack of biotic talent excludes a young Asari from military service. While fluid and mobile, Asari can't stand up in a firestorm the way a Krogan, Turian, or human could. Why not a human? A human can't stand up in a firestorm at all. At least not without armor. Since their units are small and typically lack heavy armor... Okay, there we go. But that's like a technological choice. Like heavy armor and support weapons, they're almost incapable of fighting a conventional war, particularly any of defensive nature, so Asari units typically undertake special operations missions. Like an army of ninja, they're adept at ambush, infiltration, and assassination, demoralizing and defeating their enemies through intense, focused guerrilla strikes. As a popular Turian saying puts it, the Asari are the finest warriors in the galaxy. Fortunately, there are not many of them. Okay, that quote does not follow at all from what we just read, but okay. Asari religion. The pantheistic mainstream Asari religion is Siari, which translates roughly as all is one. The faithful agree on certain core truths. The universe is a consciousness. Every life within it is an aspect of a greater whole, and death is a merging of one's spiritual energy back into the greater universal consciousness. Siarists don't specifically believe in reincarnation. They believe that spiritual energy returned to the universal consciousness upon death will eventually be used to fill new mortal vessels. Siari became popular after the Asari left their homeworld and discovered their ability to meld with nearly any form of life. This ability is seen as proof that all life is fundamentally similar. Siari priestesses see their role as promoting unity between the disparate shards of the universe's awareness. Before the rise of the Siari pantheism, Asari religions were as diverse as their political opinions. The strangest survivor of these days is the monotheistic religion worshipping the goddess Athame. Like the Asari, the goddess cycles through the triple aspects of maiden, matron, and matriarch. One interesting thing about the coupling of the Asari is that the way we usually commonly define a species nowadays in biology, to my understanding, is that any member of a species must be able to procreate with any other member of the opposite sex of the same species. So obviously, like, chimps and humans aren't the same species. Now, if Asari can procreate with basically everything, does it mean that everything is Asari according to that definition? I mean, I guess they'd have to rework their species definition then, but let's get to Salarians. Salarians are noted for their high-speed metabolism, which allows them to function on just 1 hour of sleep a day. Their minds and bodies work faster than most sapient races, making them seem restless or hyperactive. The drawback of this native active metabolism is a short lifespan of around 40 human years. The Salarians are amphibian haplodiploid egg layers. Unfertilized eggs produce males and fertilized eggs produce females. Once a year, a Salarian female will lay a clutch of dozens of eggs. Social rules prevent all but a fraction from being fertilized. As a result, 90% of the species is male. Yeah, we haven't seen any female Salarians around. Not even one. Salarians have photographic memories and rarely forget a fact. They also possess a form of psychological imprinting, tending to defer to those they knew in their youth. Salarian hatching is a solemn ritual in which a clan Delatras matriarch isolates herself with the eggs. The young Salarians psychologically imprint on her and tend to defer to her wishes. During the hatching of daughters, the Delatraces of the mother and the father's clans are present at the imprinting. This ensures the offspring have equal loyalty to both, ensuring the desired dynastic and political unity. Culture. The rare Salarian females are cloistered on their worlds out of tradition and respect. Powerful female Delatraces are dynasts and political kingpins. They determine the political course of their respective regions through shrewd negotiation. Though male Salarians rise to positions of great authority in business, academia, or the military, they rarely have any input in politics. Due to their method of reproduction, Salarians have no concept of romantic love, sexual attraction, or the biological impulses and social rituals that complicate human lives. Male-female relationships are rare due to the scarcity of females and more akin to human friendship. Sexuality is strictly for the purpose of reproduction. Boring. Ancient social codes determine who gets to fertilize eggs, which produces more daughters to continue a bloodline, I guess. Fertilization generally only occurs after months of negotiation between the parents' clans, and is done for purposes of political and dynastic alliance. No Salarian would imagine defying this code. Salarian names are quite complex. A full name includes, in order, the name of a Salarian's planet, duchy, barony, fiefdom, family, and finally the given name. Government. The Salarian government is called the Salarian Union. It is a labyrinthine web of matrilineal bloodlines with political alliances formed through interbreeding. In many ways, the Salarian political network functions like the noble families of Earth's medieval Europe. Structurally, the government consists of fiefdoms, baronies, duchies, planets, and marches, or colonization clusters. These are human nicknames. The original Solarian is unpronounceable. Each area is ruled by a single Delatras, a matriarchal head of household, and represents an increasing amount of territory and prestige within the Solarian political web. Approaching 100 members, the first circle of a Solarian's clan comprises parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, and cousins. The next circle includes second cousins, etc., and escalates to well over 1,000 members. The fourth or fifth circle of a clan numbers into the millions. Solarian loyalty is greatest to their first circle and diminishes from there. Their photographic memories allow Solarians to recognize all their myriad relatives. League of One. Before they joined the Citadel Council, the Solarians' most potent military tool was a small reconnaissance team known as the League of One. Their primary training was in espionage and assassination. Never more than a dozen strong, the team was adept at infiltrating the tightest defenses and eliminating all necessary obstacles. Only a few top members of government and military were privy to the League's identities. League members wore no distinguishing garments and held no particular rank. The only evidence of their participation in the League was a small medallion presented to each member upon induction. This secrecy was maintained until the formation of the Council. In an effort to dispel rumors and appease their new Asari partners, the Solarian Union released all classified documents pertaining to the League. The League of One was suddenly exposed and in danger of being hunted by enemies of the Solarians. Before any harm could be done, the team mysteriously disappeared. Most assumed this was a convenient lie to help hide their identities, but a few months later, the inner cabinet was murdered. Though there was no incriminating evidence, it was clear who was responsible. Realizing the threat posed by his rogue outfit, the Special Task Group dispatched a team of hunters. When they didn't return, the STG dispatched 10 of its brightest operators with broad discretionary powers. Only 2 returned. They reported no evidence of the League. No further incidents were reported, and it was assumed the League was wiped out. Some recently declassified documents, however, have suggested there may have been a 13th member who eluded the Solarian military. Salarians, Military Doctrine. In principle, the Solarian military is similar to the Alliance, a small volunteer army that focuses on maneuver warfare. What differentiates the Solarians is not their equipment or doctrine, but their intelligence services and rules of engagement. The Solarians believe that a war should be won before it begins. Conventional wisdom holds that the Solarians know everything about everyone, and this is not far from the truth. In war, the unquestioned superiority of their intelligence services allows them to use their small military to maximum effectiveness. Well before fighting breaks out, they possess complete knowledge of their enemy's positions, intentions, and timetable. In every war the Salarians have fought, they struck first and without warning. For the Salarians to know an enemy plans to attack and to let it happen is folly. To announce their own plans to attack is insanity. They find the human moral concepts of do not fire until fired upon and declare a war before prosecuting it incredibly naive. In defensive wars, they execute devastating preemptive strikes hours before the enemy's own attacks. On the offense, they have never telegraphed their intentions with a declaration of war before attacking. Biotics are virtually just like a short comment on that. That wouldn't work in any kind of environment where politics or diplomacy play any role, and it's not just like everyone kills everyone, right? Just not declaring wars. The only way you can do that is if you literally do not care about being at war all the time because you're strong enough, or because you know that your enemy won't adhere to those principles as well. Because if you constantly do this, attacking people without declarations of war and without your intentions at all being on the table, then what will happen is that no one will ever make peace with you, right? So the only way you could do that is by being strong enough to always be at war. Because otherwise, why would anyone ever make a peace treaty with you if they knew that you could just attack them at any point anyways? So it's not naive to do it differently, it's just like a necessity of living with other species that are about the same strength as you. Biotics are virtually unknown in the Solarian military. Those with such abilities are considered too valuable to be used as cannon fodder and are assigned to the intelligence services. While capable of defending themselves against most threats, the Salarians know they are a small fish in a universe filled with sharks. Yeah, they're way too aggressive for how strong they are. That's not gonna work out to any reasonable degree. As a point of survival, they have cultivated strong alliances. How? Who would ally with them? With larger powers, particularly with the Turians, though the relationship between the two species was rocky at first due to the Krogan uplift fiasco, the Salarians take pains to keep this relationship strong enough that anyone who might threaten them risks Turian intervention. Special Tasks Group. Solarian intelligence field agents are grouped into an organization called the Special Tasks Group. STG operators work in independent cells, performing dangerous missions such as counterterrorism, infiltration, reconnaissance, assassination, and sabotage. The STG is a proactive organization, puncturing worrisome trends before they become movements. At any time, a dozen groups are operating covertly within the lawless Terminus systems, sowing dissent among the various factions. Civilian analysts also note how troublesome hinge point individuals in Terminus frequently meet unexpected deaths. STG operators are feared throughout the galaxy for their clear-eyed, remorseless practicality. In other words, renegades. They're willing to do whatever it takes to achieve their mission, even if it kills civilians or results in the team's own destruction. Oh man. This game really has a boner for killing civilians. In many ways, they're akin to the Council Spectres. Recently, a number of STG cells have been redeployed from Solarian Union. It is assumed there are in the Terminus and Attican Traverse, investigating reports of Geth activity beyond the Perseus Veil. Right, Turians Biology. The Turian homeworld, Palavin, has a metal-poor core, generating a weak magnetic field and allowing more solar radiation into the atmosphere. To deal with this, most forms of life on Palavin evolved some form of metallic exoskeleton to protect themselves. Their reflective plate-like skin makes Turians less susceptible to long-term, low-level radiation exposure, but they do not possess any sort of natural armor. Turian's thick skin does not stop projectiles and directed enemy bolts. Although life on Palaven is carbon-based and oxygen-breathing, it is built on dextro amino acids. This places the Turians in a distinct minority on the galactic stage. The Quarians are the only other known sapient dextroprotein race. The food of humans, Asari or Salarians, who evolved in levo-amino acid-based biospheres, will at best pass through Turian systems without providing any nutrition. At worst, it will trigger an allergic reaction that can be fatal if not immediately treated. Turians' culture. While Turians are individuals with personal desires, their instinct is to equate the self with the group, and set aside personal desires for the good of all. Turians are taught to have a strong sense of personal accountability, the Turian honor that other races find so remarkable. Turians are taught to own every decision they make, good or ill. The worst sin they can make in the eyes of their people is to lie about their own actions. Turians who murder will try to get away with it, but if directly questioned, most will confess the crime. Turians have a strong inclination towards public service and self-sacrifice, so they tend to be poor entrepreneurs. To compensate, they accept the mercantile Volus as a client race, offering protection in exchange for their fiscal expertise. We've read this before, right? Why is it flashing then? The Turian military is at the center of their society. It is not just an armed force, it is an all-encompassing public works organization. The military police are also the civic police. The fire brigades serve the civilian population as well as the military facilities. The Corps of Engineers builds and maintains spaceports, schools, water purification plants, and power stations. The Merchant Marine ensures that all worlds get needed resources. Turian's government. The Turian government is a hierarchical meritocracy. While it has great potential for misuse, this is tempered by the civic duty and personal responsibility Turians learn in childhood. So, they're both very much about personal responsibility and about collectivism. That doesn't fit to me. Turians have 27 citizenship tiers, beginning with civilians, client races and children. The initial period of military service is the second tier. Formal citizenship is conferred at the third tier after boot camp. For client races, citizenship is granted after the individual musters out. Higher-ranked citizens are expected to lead and protect subordinates. Lower-ranked citizens are expected to obey and support superiors. Promotion to another tier of citizenship is based on the personal assessments of one's superiors and co-rankers. Throughout their lives, Turians ascend to higher tiers and are occasionally demoted to lower ones. The stigma associated with demotion lies not on the individual, but on those who promoted him when he wasn't ready for an additional responsibility. This curbs the tendency to promote individuals into positions beyond their capabilities. Yeah, I would actually say this disincentivizes promoting entirely, but what do I know? Settling into a role and rank is not considered stagnation. Turians value knowing one's own limitations more than being ambitious. At the top of the prime are the Primarchs, who rule each colonization cluster. The Primarchs vote on matters of national import. They otherwise maintain a hands-off policy, trusting the citizens on each level below them to do their jobs competently. Turians enjoy broad freedoms. So long as one completes his duties and does not prevent others from completing theirs, nothing is forbidden. For example, there are no laws against recreational drug use. But if someone is unable to complete his duties due to drug use, his superiors step in. Judicial proceedings are interventions. Peers express their concern and try to convince the offender to change. If rehabilitation fails, Turians have no qualms about sentencing dangerous individuals to life at hard labor for the state. Military doctrine. Although they lack the brutality of the Krogan, the skill of the Asari, and the virtuosity of the humans. Ugh. Virtuosity of the humans? Who wrote this? A human, I suppose. The Turian military has formidable discipline. Officers and NCOs are lifers. With years of field experience, enlisted personnel are thoroughly trained and stay calm under fire. Turian units don't break. Even if their entire line collapses, they fall back in order, sending ambushes as they go. Popular saying holds, you will only see a Turian's back once he's dead. These popular sayings suck. Get better ones. Mass Effect Galaxy. Boot camp begins on the 15th birthday. Soldiers receive a year of training before being assigned to a field unit. Officers train for even longer. Most serve until the age of 30, at which point they become part of the reserves. Even if they suffer injuries preventing frontline service, most do support work behind the lines. Biotics are uncommon. While admired for their exacting skills, Biotics' motives are not always fully trusted by the common soldier. Turians prefer to assign their biotics to specialist teams called cabals. Command and control is decentralized and flexible. Individual squads can call for artillery and air support. They make extensive use of combat drones for light duties and practice combined arms. Infantry operates with armor, supported by overhead gunships. Strategically, they are methodical and patient, and dislike risky operations. Tradition is important. Each legion has a full-time staff of historians who chronicle its battle honors in detail. The oldest have records dating back to the Turian Iron Age. If a legion is destroyed in battle, it's reconstituted rather than replaced. The Turians, so a bit like Roman legions. Turians recruit auxiliary units from conquered or absorbed minor races. Auxiliaries are generally light infantry or armored cavalry units that screen and support the main Turian formations. Again, like Roman legionaries. At the conclusion of their service in the auxiliaries, recruits are granted Turian citizenship. Again, like the Roman Empire. Turians' religion. Although Turians have a strict moral code, their belief in individual responsibility means that the concepts of good and evil are simply the individual's choice between egotism and altruism in any given decision. They have no concept of good deities that encourage noble behavior or evil ones that tempt individuals to misdeeds. Turians believe that groups and areas have spirits that transcend the individual. For example, a military unit would be considered to have a literal spirit that embodies the honor and courage it has displayed. A city's spirit reflects the accomplishments and industry of its residents. An ancient tree spirit reflects the beauty and tranquility of the area it grows within. These spirits are neither good nor evil, nor are they appealed to for intercession. Turians do not believe spirits can affect the world, but spirits can inspire the living. Prayers and rituals allow an individual to converse with a spirit for guidance or inspiration. For example, a Turian who finds his loyalty tested may appeal to the spirit of his unit, hoping to reconnect with the pride and honor of his group. A Turian who wishes to create a work of art may attempt to connect with the spirit of a beautiful location. Turians enjoying absolute freedom of religion, they do enjoy it, and can practice whatever appeals to them as long as it does not impede anyone's ability to perform their duties. There are many practitioners of the Asari Sciarist philosophy. Since opening dialogue with the Human Systems Alliance, some Turians have embraced Confucianism and Zen Buddhism. The Unification War. At about the time the Salarians and Asari were forming the Council, the Turians were embroiled in a bitter civil war. The Unification War, as it was later named, began with hostilities between the colonies furthest from the Turian homeworld, Palaven. These colonies were run by local chieftains, many of whom had distanced themselves from the hierarchy. Without the galvanizing influence of the government, the colonies became increasingly isolated and xenophobic. Colonists began wearing emblems or facial markings to differentiate themselves from members of other colonies, and open hostilities became common. When war finally broke out, the hierarchy maintained strict diplomacy and refused to get involved. After several years of fighting, less than a dozen factions remained, and the hierarchy finally intervened. By that time, the chieftains were too weak to resist. They were forced to put an end to the fighting and renew their allegiance to the hierarchy. Though peace was restored, it took several decades for animosity between colonists to fade completely. To this day, most Turians still wear the facial markings of their home colonies. As a point of interest, the Turian term barefaced refers to one who's beguiling or not to be trusted. It's also a slang term for politicians. Of course, politicians are bad. Who would have known? Okay. Damn, I don't know if we can do all this in this episode. Probably not. Aliens, extinct races. Protheans. Beacon. The Beacon was a Prothean artifact unearthed on the Alliance colony of Eden Prime. Its resemblance to the Prothean databanks recovered on Mars provoked immediate interest from the Alliance and the Citadel Council. It proved to be a solid-state data storage device, part of a galaxy-spanning comm network similar to the modern extranet. Intact Prothean paleotechnology is rare. The beacon seemed to promise another quantum leap of technology, akin to the discovery of the Mass Effect drive and relays. Unfortunately, the beacon also drew the attention of the rogue spectre Serenatarius. I think we read this before, right? Protheans Sci-Fi. The Prothean beacon downloaded its knowledge into Lieutenant Commander Shepard on Eden Prime, causing confusing dreams and visions. I think this is new. While the imagery is becoming clearer with time, the meaning of the beacon communication remains elusive. It has been suggested that Prothean data recording is highly dependent on a certain point of view, what Carl Jung describes as the collective unconscious. The cipher needed to comprehend the images implanted in Shepard's mind is the cultural knowledge of a Prothean, the archetypes, biological instincts, and common experiences universal to the race. Since the Protheans have been dead for millennia, it may be impossible to acquire this cipher. Data disks. Despite all the evidence confirming the existence of the Protheans, little is known about their culture and society. From time to time, dig sites will yield new clues, but after 50,000 years of decay, little of value is unearthed. Recent research has focused on the discovery of Prothean data disks. On their own, they are frail and rarely found in one piece. Occasionally, however, an intact disk will be discovered within a console or reading device. To date, over 36 disks have been recovered, and a few of those have been restored to the point where researchers can begin analyzing them. Though it may be some time before scientists discover a way to transfer the data off the disks, they are currently considered the most tangible leads for learning more about Prothean culture. Protheans, Mars ruins. After 20 years of manned research outposts and nearly a century of robotic exploration, the European Space Agency's Lowell City became the first permanent settlement on Mars in 2103. Within a decade, the United States and China had founded permanent settlements as well. The South Polar region of Promethae Planum developed a Bermuda Triangle reputation. Satellites detected intermittent mass concentrations and magnetic field shifts. In 2148, prospectors working near Deseado Crater discovered an underground complex, a Prothean observation post. The odd phenomena were generated by the operation of discharge of a Mass Effect core, struggling to function despite 50 millennia of neglect. Earth was electrified by the news. Humanity was unequivocally not alone. While courts battled over who owned the ruins, the international scientific community coordinated a massive effort to access, translate, and interpret the databanks recovered from the facility. The facility proved to be a biosciences observation post built when Homo sapiens were first evolving on Earth. While the motives of the Protheans are not certain, translated records indicate that the facility was in regular communication with automated observation platforms in Earth orbit and on the lunar near side. The half-dozen Mass Effect spaceships found in the facility were presumably used for first-hand observation. Non-council races. Geth armatures. Armatures are quadruped, all-terrain heavy weapons platforms, akin to the armored fighting vehicles of other races. Geth being synthetic synthetic intelligences, armatures are not crude vehicles, but intelligent entities capable of independent decision-making and learning. Armatures are equipped with heavy kinetic barriers. Their main cannon, mounted on the articulated head turret, appears to be a highly efficient conventional mass accelerator. It is capable of firing in anti-personnel and anti-tank modes. Some armatures carry drones into battle, presumably for reconnaissance purposes. Others host a swarm of insect-sized repair microbots. Geth Hoppers. The Geth models, collectively dubbed Hoppers by Alliance forces, are electronic warfare platforms. They can project electromagnetic radiation across a broad spectrum as an offensive weapon. They can also perform cyber warfare attacks against the onboard computers of body armor hardsuits and weapons, adversely affecting their performance. The structure of Hoppers consists of an advanced and highly elastic artificial muscle material. This allows a Hopper to compress its entire body for powerful leaps. Hoppers also have thousands of molecule-scale barbs on the surface of their hands and feet, which are used to climb or cling to walls and ceilings. Hoppers are very difficult targets, leaping from one surface to another in rapid succession. The Quarians have no record of any Geth models similar to Hoppers. This new morphotype must have been developed over the last 300 years by the Geth themselves. This is troubling proof that the Geth are continuing to move towards technological singularity. Experts in synthetic life are intrigued that Hoppers appear to have been more organic than the baseline Geth. The identified subtypes of Hopper have been codenamed Sapper, Stalker, and Ghost. Krogans. Krogan Biology. The Krogan evolved in a lethal ecology. Over millions of years, the grim struggle to survive larger predators, virulent disease, and resource scarcity on their homeworld Tuchanka turned the lizards into quintessential survivors. Perhaps the most telling indicator of Tuchanka's lethality is the Krogan eyes. Though they are predator species by any standard definition, their eyes evolved to be wide-set, as in human prey species like deer and cattle. Krogan eyes have a 240-degree arc of vision, better suited for spotting enemies sneaking up on them than for pursuit. Why did they develop that way? Were there other predators that got to them, or is it for environmental hazards? Physically, the Krogan are nigh indestructible, with a tough hide impervious to any melee weapon short of a molecular blade. While they feel pain, it does not affect their ability to concentrate. They have multiple functioning examples of all major organs, and can often survive the loss of one or two of any type. Rather than a nervous system, they have an electrically conductive second circulatory system. Krogan can never be paralyzed. They may lose some of this fluid, but it can be replaced by the body in time. The hump on a Krogan's back stores water and fats that help the Krogan survive lean times. Large humps are a point of pride. Being well fed implies the Krogan is a superior predator. The most widely known biological feature of the Krogan is their incredible birth rate and rapid maturity. Once freed from the hostile cauldron of Tuchanka, the Krogan population swelled into a numberless horde. Only the genophage kept them from outbreeding and the combined council races. Now the rare Krogan females capable of bringing a child to term are treated like strategic resources. Warlords will trade them at diplomacy, or more frequently fight wars over them. Bit like the orcs in Warhammer, right? Breeding very fast. Krogan Culture. The harsh Krogan homeworld conditioned the Krogan psychology for toughness just as it did the body. Krogan have always had a tendency to be selfish, unsympathetic, and blunt. They respect strength and self-reliance and are neither surprised nor offended by treachery. Chaotic evil, that is, huh? The weak and selfless do not live long. In their culture, looking out for number one is simply a matter of course. After their defeat in the rebellions, the very concept of Krogan leadership was discredited. Where a warlord could once command enough power to bring entire solar systems to heel and become overlord, These days it is rare for a single leader to have more than 1,000 warriors swear allegiance to him. Most Krogan trust and serve no one but themselves. This solitary attitude stems in part from a deep sense of fatalism and futility, a profound social effect of the genophage that caused Krogan numbers to dwindle to a relative handful. Not only are they angry that the entire galaxy seems out to get them, the Krogan are also generally pessimistic about the race's chances of survival. The surviving Krogan see no point to building for the future. There will be no future. The Krogan live with an attitude of kill, pillage, and be selfish, for tomorrow we die. Like pirates or something. Krogan Genophage. The Genophage bioweapon was created to end the Krogan rebellions. From the start, the Krogan had overwhelmed the Council. Only timely first contact with the Turians saved the Council races. The Turians, it was just the Asari at that point though, right? On the Council. Unless there was someone else before. The Turians fought the Krogans to a standstill, but sheer weight of Krogan numbers indicated the war could not be won through conventional means. The Turians collaborated with the Salarians to genetically engineer counter to the rapid breeding of the Krogan. No, that's right. First it was Asari, then Salarians, then Turians. The genophage virus gained the energy to replicate by eating key genetic sequences. Every cell in every Krogan had to be altered for the weapon to be foolproof. Otherwise, the Krogan would have used gene therapy to fix the affected tissues. Once the genophage strain could find no more genes to eat, it would starve and die, limiting spin-off mutation and contamination. This created genetic flaw is hereditary. The Salarians believed the genophage would be used as a deterrent, a position the Turians viewed as naive. Once the project was complete, the Turians mass-produced and deployed it. The Krogan homeworld, their colonies, and all occupied worlds were infected. The resulting mutation made only 1 in 1,000 Krogan pregnancies carry to term. It did not reduce fertility, but offspring viability. The rare females able to carry children to term became prizes the Krogan warlords fought brutal battles over. That's kind of extra cruel, right? Because they can get pregnant, but most of them don't carry to term. The Krogan are a shadow of their former glory. While the rebellions took place centuries ago, they are constantly reminded of the horror of the genophage, and of their inability to counter it. The release of the genophage is still controversial, bitterly debated in many circles. We read about the rebellions. How about their military doctrine? Traditional Krogan tactics were built on attritional mass unit warfare. Equipped with cheap, rugged gear, troop formations were powerful but inflexible. Command and control was very centralized. Soldiers in the field who saw a target contacted their commanders behind the lines to arrange the support. Since the genophage, the Krogan can no longer afford the casualties of the old horde attacks. The battle masters are a match for any 10 soldiers of another species. To a battle master, killing is a science. They focus on developing a clean, brute force economy of motion that exploits their brutal strength to incapacitate enemies with a swift single blow of overwhelming power. This change of focus from mass unit warfare to maximal efficiency has increased employment demand in the fields of security and muscle for hire. Due to the unsavory reputation of the Krogan, most of these jobs are on the far side of the law. Battle masters are not spit and polish, but they do believe in being well armed and equipped, preferably with a gun for each limb. They are callous and brutal, but methodical and disciplined. They use any means at their disposal, including killing civilians, to achieve their goals, no matter how reprehensible. Hostage-taking and genocide are acceptable means to ensure a quiet occupation with few Krogan casualties. The Krogan serving with Saren's force appear to be returning to the old style of mass attritional combat. They also work in close cooperation with supporting Geth units and fill the roles occupied by combat drones in other armies. Biotics are rare among the Krogan. Oh, Rex is rare then. Those that exist are viewed with suspicion and fear. The Krogan see this aura of fear as a useful quality for an officer, and often promote them. Combat drones and other high-tech equipment are likewise in short supply. Quarians' economy. The Migrant Fleet has little economic base, operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth. While Quarian ships include light maneuvering and assembly plants, they lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. A single disaster could destroy the fragile balance. The Quarians earn income in creative ways, because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual. The Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet to bring in resources and income. A species who suspects the Migrant Fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift. A gift of surplus starships, fuel, and resources to convince the Conclave to alter their course. That's a bit like the Mongols. As the fleet passes, and the Huns too. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over asteroids for metals and what's that word? Silicious? I've never heard that before. Materials and cometary bodies for water, ice, and organics. Quarian miners are adept at locating and strip mining spaceborne resources. This sparks conflicts with corporations already working the system. Large mining concerns spend millions on lobbyists and public relations, portraying the Quarians as locusts, devouring the resources of a system before moving on. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, there are skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging for skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. Quarians are widely hated among the working classes. The Quarians are coming to take our jobs is a common response to the fleet's approach. Quarians' government. Due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, government is somewhat autocratic. The Migrant Fleet's operations are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave aboard the flagship. The number of representatives is based on crew size. Larger clans with bigger ships and more votes form the cores of political blocs. Opposition comes from the Outriders coalition, with delegates from thousands of smaller ships. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decisions in most circumstances. However, if all 5 members agree that a Conclave decision jeopardizes the survival of the fleet and cannot get the Conclave to address their concerns, they have the right to summarily overturn the legislative decision. After the Admiralty uses this extraordinary power, they must resign. If the Admiralty does not step down after using their veto, the rest of the military is obliged to arrest them. Each ship captain has authority over his vessel, but is advised by an elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. This relationship may range from cooperation to polite tolerance to outright hostility, but any captain who overrules his council without good reason is relieved of command by the Admiralty. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big, rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Clan vessel captains are not subject to dismissal by the Admiralty. Abusive captains are a family problem if they do not disrupt the operations of the fleet. Quarians, law and defense. Although the Conclave establishes civil law much as any planet-based democracy, enforcement and trials are more unique. After the flight from the Geth, there were few constables to police the millions of civilians aboard the fleet, so the Navy parceled out marine squads to maintain order and enforce the law. Today, Quarian Marines have evolved training and tactics akin to civilian police, but remain adept at combat in the confined spaces of a starship, and fully under the command of the military. Once taken into custody, the accused is brought before the ship's captain for judgment. While the ship's council may make recommendations, tradition holds that the captain has absolute authority in matters of discipline. Most are lenient, assigning additional or more odious maintenance tasks aboard the ship. Persistent recidivists are accidentally left on the next habitable world. This practice of abandoning criminals on other people's planets is a point of friction between the Quarians and the systems they pass through. Captains rarely have another choice. With space and resources at a premium, supporting a non-productive prison population is not an option. Man, how about rehabilitation? Well, I guess they try that too. In the early years, many Quarian freighters were armed and used as irregular privateers. Civilian ships still show a strong preference for armament, making them unpopular targets for pirates. Though they have rebuilt their military, there are still mere hundreds of warships to protect tens of thousands of ships. The Quarian Navy follows strict routines of patrol and takes no chances. If the intent of an approaching ship can't be ascertained, they shoot to kill. Migrant Fleet. The Migrant Fleet is the largest concentration of seafaring vessels in the galaxy. Starfaring, I suppose. Sprawling across millions of kilometers, it can take days for the entire fleet to pass through a mass relay. When the Quarians fled their home world, the fleet was a motley aggregation of freighters, shuttles, industrial vessels, and the odd warship. After 3 centuries, all have been modified to support larger crews as comfortably as possible. As the Quarians achieved stability, they began weeding out the ships least suitable for long-term habitation, selling them and pooling the money to buy larger and more space-worthy hulls. This process is ongoing as vessels wear out and break down. While some ships enjoy dedicated cabins with full privacy and sanitary facilities, many more are former freighters whose cargo bays and containers are pressurized and divided into family spaces using simple metal cubicle bulkheads. Quarians live in these austere spaces with colorful quilts and tapestries, which also help muffle sound. The day-to-day operations of the fleet, traffic control, station keeping, supply distribution, and so on, are under military jurisdiction. Though ship captains have the authority to deviate from their assigned positions and may leave the fleet at any time, they are assumed to do so at their own risk. As the Migrant Fleet moves around the galaxy, many ships split off to pursue individual goals, returning days or years later. Man, it would be kinda cool if we could visit the Migrant Fleet at all. Sounds very interesting. We've read Pilgrimage. We haven't read Religion yet. The ancient Quarians practiced ancestor worship. Even after abandoning faith for secularism, Quarians continued to revere the wisdom of the elders. As time passed and technology advanced, they inevitably turned their knowledge to preserving the personalities and memories of the elderly as computer virtual intelligences. These recordings became a repository of knowledge and wisdom, stored in a central databank and available through any extranet connection. They held no illusions that this was a form of immortality. Like all virtual intelligences, their electronically preserved ancestors were not truly sapient. This was considered a surmountable problem. Sapience could surely be reduced to simple mathematics. Quarians began exhaustive research into creating artificial intelligence so that they could learn to escape the bounds of mortality and give their ancestral records true awareness. Unfortunately, the life the Quarians created did not accept the same truths they did. The Geth destroyed the ancestor databanks when they took over. In the centuries since they evacuated their homeworld, most Quarians have returned to religion in various forms. Many believe that the rise of the Geth and the destruction of their ancestors were chastisement for arrogantly forsaking the old ways and venerating self-made idols. Others have a more philosophical outlook, believing that the race was indeed arrogant, but no supernatural agency lay behind the Geth revolt. Rather, the Quarians' actions wrought their own doom. Either way, every Quarian would agree that their own hubris cost them their homeworld. Right, and that was just the alien races. How many more entries do we have here? Oh, that's just one. Five. Two. Okay. Let's do that in this episode then. It's gonna be a bit longer, but we'll cover everything. Might need to get something to drink though. I have some water here. Citadel's Serpent Nebula. The Citadel is surrounded by a blue-tinted reflection nebula. The light of the nebula is actually light from the Citadel, scattered and reflected back at the station. At first, the Serpent Nebula was assumed to be a mode of microscopic construction debris. Prevailing theory holds that the Protheans used molecular nanotechnology to manufacture the incredibly durable materials used in the Citadel. But unlike other nebulae, the Serpent does not dissipate over time. Therefore, it must be replenished constantly. The current popular theory is that the non-recyclable waste collected by the Citadel's keepers is somehow rendered down into the atomic or molecular level and ejected into the cloud. The thick nebula represents a navigation hazard. We've read this before, don't we? Haven't we, I mean. Beyond the relatively clear areas around the Citadel, electrical discharges are common. These are not blocked by kinetic barriers and can severely damage metal-framed starships. In addition, some dense knots of dust can overwhelm the repulsion of kinetic barriers on smaller ships. If such a vessel is moving fast enough at the time, the effects are similar to being hit by a sandblaster. Attempting to reach the Citadel through open space navigation is unadvisable. The only safe approach is through the various mass relays that orbit it. Humanity and the Systems Alliance. In the 22nd century, manipulation of the human genome became commonplace. Techniques of genetic engineering advanced to the point where the rich could custom-build fetuses that grew into stronger, smarter, and more attractive adults. In more permissive regions, custom-designed life forms and uplifted animals occupied an ill-defined niche between property and sapient being. Travel to planets with unique forms of life brought an awareness that Earth's unique biodiversity could be lost if spliced and hybridized to gain useful alien qualities. The Saddam-Walcott Genetic Heritage Act was passed by the Systems Alliance Parliament in 2161. It imposed sharp restrictions on controversial uses of genetic engineering, but provided government subsidies for beneficial applications. Screening and therapy. Most governments provide free assessments and corrective therapy for genetic diseases in prospective parents. This has nearly eliminated everything from cystic fibrosis to nearsightedness. The earlier screening and therapy is performed, the more comprehensive the results. Though ideally performed on artificially fertilized zygotes in a lab, procedures are available for embryos in the womb and newborns, out of respect for personal beliefs. Enhancement. Improvement of natural human abilities is legal, but adding new abilities is not. Treatments to improve strength, reflexes, mental acuity, or appearance are permitted. Adding a tail or the ability to digest cellulose is not. Some genetic enhancement is provided for free to Alliance military recruits, but the average citizen must pay for the privilege. The process can take years to reach fruition in an adult. Engineering. Artificial hybridization of genes from compatible non-human species with human genetic code is illegal. Creation of designed life is broadly legal and mainly used for terraforming and medical applications. But sentient creatures are heavily regulated, and creation of sapient life is outlawed by both the Systems Alliance and the Citadel Council. I'd like to see like much more variety in what humans do with their bodies then. I mean, I know they don't, like, they're not allowed to do new stuff like tails or whatever, but insanely buff people, for instance. Also, if they can improve their looks, why is everyone so ugly? Looking at you, Anderson and Udina, for instance. Navigator Presley. Alright. Geological survey. As the human race expands its territory and raises the general standard of living, demand for industrial resources continues to grow. Many planets, moons and asteroids contain a wealth of resources, but many systems have barely been charted, let alone thoroughly surveyed. Unmanned probes are one solution, but they're often lost to space hazards, unforeseen circumstances and theft by salvagers. In recent years, AGES, the Alliance Geological Service, has offered bounties to private individuals or teams willing to perform mineralogical surveys on the frontier. This survey data is made publicly available to further corporate development. Due to the cost of travel and the dangers of operating on hostile worlds, it is rarely a profitable endeavor. Oh, that's what we did. Light metals, metals with low atomic weight, are often used in construction of spacecraft and vehicles. Heavy metals, metals with higher atomic weights, are used to construct equipment components. The platinum group elements are particularly useful. Rare earths. Most useful materials in this category are radioactives or magnets. Gases. Various gases are required to support all known forms of sapient life. Some are commonly used as fuel. Systems Alliance Military Doctrine. The Alliance military is of great concern to the galaxy. At first contact with the Turians, they were completely inexperienced. Turian disdain changed to respect after the relief of Shangji, where the humans surprised them with novel technologies and tactics. The human devotion to understanding and adapting to modern space warfare stunned the stayed Council races. For hundreds of years, they had lived behind secure walls of long-proven technologies and tactics. The Council regards the Alliance as a sleeping giant. Less than 3% of humans volunteer to serve in their military, a lower proportion than any other species. It's actually quite a bit. That would be like 10 million soldiers in the United States, or like, you know, 2.5 million in Germany. While competent, Alliance soldiers are neither as professional as the Turians nor as skilled as the Asari. Their strengths lie in fire support, flexibility and speed. They make up for lack of numbers with sophisticated technical support, VIs, drones, artillery, electronic warfare, and emphasis on mobility and individual initiative. Their doctrine is not based on absorbing and dishing out heavy shocks like the Turians and Krogan. Rather, they bypass enemy strong points and launch deep into their rear, cutting supply lines and destroying headquarters and support units, leaving enemies to wither on the vine. On defense, the human military is a rapid reaction force that lives by Sun Tzu's maxim, "He who tries to defend everything defends nothing." Garrisons are intended for scouting rather than combat, avoiding engagement to observe and report on invaders using drones. The token garrisons of human colonies make it easy for alien powers to secure them, for which the Alliance media criticizes the military. Ah, damn media. However, the powerful fleets stationed at phase-gate nexuses, such as Arcturus, are just a few hours or days from any colony within their sphere of responsibility. In the event of an attack, they respond with overwhelming force. Military ranks. The Alliance uses a modified version of the ranking system that has been used for hundreds of years. Soldiers are classified into rank-and-file enlisted personnel, experienced non-commissioned officers, NCOs, and specially trained officers. The divide between naval personnel and ground forces, Marines, is small. Ground units are a specialized branch of the fleet, just as fighter squadrons are. This unity of command is imposed by the futility of fighting without control of orbit. Without the Navy, any army is pointless. The Marines, as a matter of pride, maintain some of their traditional rank titles. For example, Marines have privates and corporals instead of servicemen. In ascending order of responsibility, the ranks of the Alliance are: Enlisted, Serviceman 3rd class, Private 2nd class, Serviceman 2nd class, Private 1st class, Serviceman 1st class, Corporal. NCOs, Service Chief, Gunnery Chief, Operations Chief. Officers: 2nd Lieutenant, 1st Lieutenant, Staff Lieutenant, Lieutenant Commander, Staff Commander, Captain or Major, Rear Admiral, General, Admiral, and Fleet Admiral. Terra Firma Party. Terra Firma is an alliance political party formed after the First Contact War. Its policy agenda is based on the principle that Earth must stand firm against alien influences. This covers a variety of legislation. Recent activities by Terra Firma include opposition to a law requiring high school alien language study, a proposal to increase tariffs on alien imports, and leading a popular movement to mark the First Contact War with a public holiday. Though founded by well-meaning individuals, who the fuck wrote this? Who feared the submersion of native human cultures under a wave of alien vogue. Wow. Terra Firma's agenda attracts many jingoists and xenophobes. Who could have thought? Who could have thought that they would attract jingoists and xenophobes? I'm literally speechless. Not. Planets and locations. Stations. Arcturus Station. Arcturus Station is the gateway to Sol, a 5-kilometer diameter Stanford-Torres-type space station at the trailing Lagrange point of the gas giant Themis. Construction on Arcturus Station began in 2151 and concluded in 2162. It was inaugurated in 2156 and has served as the military and political headquarters of the Systems Alliance from the First Contact War until the present. When humanity activated the Charon Mars Relay in 2149, it led to Arcturus, 36 light-years from Sol, Earth's sun. Arcturus is the third brightest star seen from Earth. It is an ancient red giant from the generation born before Sol. Its worlds are either gas giants or ice chunks. While some rocky debris exists, the metal content is 25% lower than normal. To build Arcturus Station, metallic asteroids were towed through the Mars relays to the construction site. Many of these asteroids remain near the station, their mined-out areas home to transient populations. The expense of bringing construction materials into the system was acceptable due to its strategic value. With 3 primary Mars relays in addition to the secondary one to Sol, Arcturus is a major communications and military choke point. The Alliance First Fleet is based in Arcturus, where it can guard the gates to Sol and react to incursions in the 3 connected clusters. The station also hosts the Systems Alliance Parliament and the Systems Alliance Military General Headquarters. Its permanent population is approximately 45,000. Arcturus is actually from the galactic halo, one of a cluster of 52 stars that are crashing through the disk of the galaxy. In a billion years, Arcturus will be sailing through the depths of extragalactic dark space. Gagarin Station. Gagarin Station is the largest deep space station built by humanity. A Bernal sphere design with 500-meter diameter habitable area, it was constructed beyond Pluto, nearly 80 astronomical units or 12 billion kilometers from Sol. Moving crew and material to this location bankrupted most of the backers. Gagarin was placed at the inner edge of the heliopause, the point at which the solar system, or the solar wind, can no longer push back the interstellar medium. It was built to test a number of faster-than-light drive principles that theoretically could only occur in interstellar space. The station was nicknamed Jump Zero, as it was intended to be the jumping-off point for humanity's expansion into the galaxy. Shortly after the station was completed, the Prothean ruins were discovered on Mars, rendering the entire effort moot. After struggling to make a profit for a decade, Gagarin was sold to the Systems Alliance in 2159 for a fraction of its construction costs. The Alliance refurbished it as a research and training center for the recently discovered biotic phenomenon. In 2169, the Biotic Acclimation and Training Program was shut down and Gagarin became a general research facility. Its remote location and intentional isolation from the extranet makes it popular for dangerous research, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence. Humanity's first stable AI, the Alliance-sponsored ELIZA, achieved sapience at Gagarin in 2172. Like 10 years ago, right? Today, Gagarin Station has a permanent population of approximately 9,000. That's more than Arcturus. A plan has been proposed to move to the gravitationally stable Barry center point between Pluto and the Charon Relay, allowing it to serve as a gateway facility between the Sol and Arcturus systems. The high cost of safely moving its mass has delayed this indefinitely. You don't know how long it's been delayed. You don't live in the future. Ships and vehicles. FTL drive appearance, we've read this before. Drive charge. As positive or negative electric current is passed through an FTL drive core, it acquires a static electrical charge. Drives can be operated an average of 50 hours before they reach charge saturation. This charge is proportional to the magnitude of mass reduction. A heavier or faster ship reaches saturation more quickly. If the charge is allowed to build, the core will discharge into the hull of the ship. All ungrounded crew members are fried to a crisp. All electronic systems are burned out, and metal bulkheads may be melted and fused together. The safest way to discharge a core is to land on a planet and establish a connection to the ground. Like a lightning rod. Larger vessels like dreadnoughts cannot land and must discharge into a planetary magnetic field. The ship passes the charge from the drive core to the exterior armored hull, then dives into the magnetic field. As the hull discharges, sheets of lightning jump away into the field, creating beautiful auroral displays on the planet. The ship must retract its sensors and weapons while dumping charge to prevent damage, leaving it blind and helpless. Discharging at a moon with weak magnetic field can take days. Discharging into a powerful field of a gas giant may require less than an hour. Deep space facilities such as the Citadel often have special discharge facilities for visiting ships. Space combat. Combat endurance. Heat limits the length and intensity of ship-to-ship combat. Starships generate enormous heat when they fire high-energy weapons, perform maneuvering burns, and run on board combat electronics. In combat, warships produce heat more quickly than they can disperse it. As heat builds within a vessel, the crewed spaces become increasingly uncomfortable. Before the heat reaches lethal levels, a ship must win or retreat by entering FTL. After an FTL run, the ship halts, shuts down non-essential systems, and activates the heat radiation gear. Combat endurance varies by ship design and by the battle's location. Battles in the deep cold of interstellar space can go on for some time. Engagements close to a star are brief. Since habitable worlds are usually close to a star, battles over them are frantic. General tactics. Shells lofted by surface navies crash back to Earth when their acceleration is overwhelmed by gravity and air resistance. In space, a projectile has unlimited range. It will keep moving until it hits something. Practical gunnery range is determined by the velocity of the attacker's ordnance and the maneuverability of the target. Beyond a certain range, a small ship's ability to dodge trumps a larger larger attacker's projectile speed. The longest ranged combat occurs between dreadnoughts, whose projectiles have the highest velocity but are the least maneuverable. The shortest range combat is between frigates, which have the slowest projectile velocities and highest maneuverability. Opposing dreadnoughts open with a main gun artillery duel at extreme ranges of tens of thousands of kilometers. The fleets close, maintaining evasive lateral motion while keeping their bow guns facing the enemy. Fighters are launched in an attempt to close to disruptor torpedo range. Cautious admirals weaken the enemy with ranged fire and fighter strikes before committing to close action. Aggressive commanders advance so cruisers and frigates can engage. At long range, the main guns of cruisers become useful. Friendly interceptors engage enemy fighters until the attackers enter the range of ship-based Guardian fire. Dreadnoughts fire from the rear, screened by smaller ships. Commanders must decide whether to commit to a general melee or retreat into FTL. At medium range, ships can use broadside guns. Fleets intermingle and it becomes difficult to retreat in order. Ships with damaged kinetic barriers are vulnerable to Wolfpack frigate flotillas that speed through the battle space. Only fighters and frigates enter close or knife fight ranges of 10 or fewer kilometers. Fighters lose their disruptor torpedoes, bringing down a ship's kinetic barriers and allowing it to be swarmed by frigates. Guardian lasers become viable weapons, swatting down fighters and boiling away warship armor. Neither dreadnoughts nor cruisers can use their main guns at close range. Laying the bow on a moving target becomes impossible. Superheated thruster exhaust becomes a hazard. Space combat, planetary assaults. Planetary assaults are complicated if the target is a habitable garden world. The attackers cannot approach the defenders straight on. The Citadel conventions prohibit the use of large kinetic impactors against habitable worlds. In a straight-on attack, any misses plow into the planet behind the defending fleet. If the defenders position themselves between the attackers and the planet, they can fire at will while the attacker risks hitting the planet. Successful assaults on garden worlds hinge upon up-to-date intelligence. Attackers need to determine where the enemy's defenses are, so they may approach from an angle that allows them to fire with no danger of collateral damage. Note, this is not necessary for hostile worlds. Once control of orbit has been lost, defensive garrisons disperse into the wilderness. An enemy with orbital superiority can bombard surface forces with impunity. The best option for defenders is to hide and collect reconnaissance in anticipation of relief forces. Given the size of a planet, it is impractical to garrison entire conquered worlds. Fortunately, colonization efforts tend to focus on building up a dozen or fewer areas. Ground forces occupy the spaceports, industrial facilities, and major population centers. The wilderness is patrolled by unmanned aerial vehicles and satellite reconnaissance. If a defender unit is spotted, air mobile rapid deployment units and satellite artillery are used to pin down and destroy them. Oh, there are so many more. I didn't even scroll down. Crew considerations. On starships. Cabins give each individual 10 cubic meters of space. On larger vessels, private rooms are common. As ships get smaller, the number of crew packed into a single wardroom increases. Asari prefer shared spaces even on large vessels, while Krogan territorial instincts make it impossible for them to cohabitate even on the smallest ships. On smaller vessels, hot bunking is the norm. That sounds cool. Crew members assigned to different watches share the same bunk. When one gets off duty, he wakes up the person in the bunk. While the crewman is on duty, the first gets his rec time. Spacecraft compartments can be isolated by airtight doors in case of decompression. The cinematic version of explosive decompression is fiction. Old compartments either take enough damage that occupants are killed instantly, or leak slowly enough that they are able to reach protective gear. Compartments are equipped with emergency life support apparatus, fireproof plastic bubbles with air bottles. Small when stowed, ELSA comfortably accommodate one individual inflated. Damage control procedure cuts off ventilation to burning compartments. Without oxygen to consume, fires die in seconds. The compartment is repressurized afterwards for crew recovery. Mass effect fields create an artificial gravity or agrav plane below the decks, preventing muscle atrophy and bone loss in 0G. Large vessels arrange their decks perpendicular to their thrust axis. The highest decks are at the bow and the lowest at the engines. This allows agrav to work with the inertial effects of thrust. Ships that can land arrange their decks laterally so the crew can move out and about while the vessel is on the ground. Warships normally turn off their agrav systems during combat, reducing the heat generated by systems and increasing combat endurance. To provide a point of reference for navigating in 0G, floors are painted a different color from the walls and ceiling. Starship's fighters. Fighters are single-pilot combat small craft. They are lightweight enough that they can be economically fitted with the powerful element Zero cores, making them capable of greater acceleration and sharper maneuvers than starships. Kinetic barrier shields change starship battles from short, vicious bloodbaths to extended, indecisive slugging matches. Only the main gun of a dreadnought could punch a mass accelerator slug through the barriers of an opposing dreadnought. This changed with the development of the fighter-launched mass disruptor torpedo, a short-ranged weapon that can penetrate kinetic barriers to destroy their projector assemblies. Starship Guardian defenses must be overwhelmed through swarm tactics. Fighter groups can take heavy casualties, pressing their torpedo attacks home. Once fighter-launched torpedoes have crippled an enemy's barriers, the mass accelerators on frigates and cruisers can make short work of them. Interceptors are a type of fighter optimized to attack other fighters. We've heard this before. Why was it blinking? Or flashing, rather. With no ability to damage starships, interceptors are used to screen friendly units from incoming fighter attack. Yeah. Heat management. Dispersal of heat generated by onboard systems is a critical issue for any ship. If it cannot deal with heat, the crew may be cooked within the hull. Radiation is the only way to shed heat in a vacuum. Civilian vessels utilize large, fragile radiator panels that are impossible to armor. Warships use diffuse radiator arrays, DRA, ceramic strips along the exterior of the armored hull. These make the ship appear striped to thermographic sensors. Since the arrangement of the ships depends on the eternal configuration of the ship, the patterns for each vessel are unique and striking. On older ships, the DRA strips could become red or white hot. Dubbed tiger stripes or war paint by humans, the glowing DRA had a psychological impact on pirates and irregular forces. Strip radiators are not as efficient as panels, but if damaged by enemy fire, the ship only loses a small portion of its total radiation capacity. In most cases, a vessel's DRA alone allows it to cruise with no difficulties. Operations deep within a solar system can cause problems. A ship engaged in combat can produce titanic amounts of heat from maneuvering burns and weapons fire. When fighting in a high-heat environment, warships employ high-efficiency droplet heat sinks. In a droplet system, tanks of liquid sodium or lithium absorb heat within the ship. The liquid is vented from spray nozzles near the bow as a thin sheet of millions of micrometer scale droplets. The droplets are caught at the stern and recycled into the system. A droplet system can sink 10 to 100 times as much heat as a DRA strip. Droplet sheets resemble a surface ship's wake through the water. The wake peels out in sharp turns, spreading a fan of droplets as the ship changes vectors and leaves the coolant behind. Vehicles, combat drones. Drones are small robots used to support and supplement organic soldiers on the battlefield. They have no artificial intelligence of any kind, but follow fixed, minimally adaptive programs. Most varieties employ mass effect levitation to improve mobility. All modern armies rely on veritable fleets of drones for routine soldiering, static garrisons, patrols, etc. The use of drones is non-critical. In non-critical duties keeps manpower needs down and reduces casualties in low-intensity conflicts. Less advanced races and cultures with less sensitivity to casualties have correspondingly fewer drones in their inventory. Drones are of little use in conventional open-field battles, as they are poorly armed and armored. This is also a nice take. Less advanced races and cultures with less sensitivity have less combat drones. I see. In addition to combat drones, support drones are used to assist organic units in the field. Reconnaissance drones are small, stealthy craft that screen combat units in the field and warn commanders when enemies are spotted. Electronic warfare drones supplement battlefield technicians, serving as mobile jammers and ELINT, electronic intelligence gathering platforms. Military and civilian police utilize Dazzler drones equipped with powerful strobe lights to disorient and subdue intruders using non-lethal force. Drone formations are officially referred to as wings, i.e. deploy the 4th Assault Drone Wing on the left flank. Common soldiers often refer to friendly formations as flocks and enemy formations as swarms. Disruptor torpedoes. Disruptor torpedoes are powered projectiles with warheads that create random and unstable mass effect fields when triggered. These fields warp spacetime in localized areas. The rapid asymmetrical mass changes cause the target to rip itself apart. In flight, torpedoes use a mass-increasing field, making them too massive for enemy kinetic barriers to repulse. This extra mass gives torpedoes very sluggish acceleration, making them easy prey for defensive Guardian weapons. So, torpedoes have to be launched at very close range. Torpedoes are the main anti-ship weapon used by fighters. They are launched from point-blank range in triple fire waves reminiscent of the ancient Calliope rocket artillery launchers, thus their popular nickname Callies. By saturating defense Guardian systems with multiple targets, at least a few will get through. Weapons Guardian. A ship's General Area Defense Integration Anti-Spacecraft Network, or Guardian, consists of anti-missile and anti-fighter laser turrets on the exterior hull. Because these are under computer control, the gunnery control officer needs to do little beyond turn the system on and designate targets as hostile. Since lasers move at light speed, they cannot be dodged by anything moving at non-relativistic speeds. Unless the beam is aimed poorly, it will always hit its target. In the early stages of a battle, the Guardian fire is 100% accurate. It is not 100% lethal, but it doesn't have to be. Damaged fighters must break off for repairs. Lasers are limited by diffraction. The beam spreads out, decreasing the energy density, or watts per square meter, the weapon can place on the target. Any high-powered laser is a short-ranged weapon. Guardian networks have another limitation: heat. Weapons-grade lasers require cooldown time, during which heat is transferred to sinks or radiators. As lasers fire, heat builds within them, reducing damage, range, and accuracy. Fighters attack in swarms. The first few will be hit by Guardian, but as battle continues, the effects of laser overheat will allow the attackers to press ever closer to the ship. Constant use will burn out a laser. Guardian lasers typically operate in infrared frequencies. Shorter frequencies would offer superior stopping power and range, but degradation of focal arrays and mirrors would make them expensive to maintain. And most prefer mechanical reliability over bleeding-edge performance when lives are concerned. Salarians, however, use near-ultraviolet frequency lasers with 6 times the range, believing that having additional time to shoot down incoming missiles is more important. Lasers are not blocked by the kinetic barriers of capital ships. However, the range of lasers limits their use to rare knife fight range ship-to-ship combat. Right, and that was ships and vehicles. Now for biology, technology. Yeah, we've read biotic amps before. Biotics, life as a biotic. Biotics possess extraordinary abilities, but they must live with minor inconveniences. The most obvious issue is getting adequate nutrition. Creating biotic mass takes such a toll on metabolism that active biotics develop ravenous appetites. The standard Alliance combat ration for a soldier is 3,000 calories per day. Biotics are given 4,500, as well as a canteen of potent energy drink for a quick refreshment after a hard combat. Another issue is electric charge. 3,000 calories is not a lot if you're very physically active. Another issue is electric charge. Electricity accumulated in Starship drive cores must be discharged, and so must the electricity in a biotic user. Biotics are prone to small static discharges when they touch metal. Unfortunately, human biotics also face suspicion and persecution, beginning with the popular misconception that they can read and control minds. Biotics symbolize the dehumanization of mankind to people philosophically or religiously opposed to gene modification and cybernetics. Militaries are the only organizations that always welcome biotics, offering them huge recruitment incentives. Biotics Training. Biotic implants and amplifiers only provide the potential to create coherent mass effect fields. Whether biotics can actually do so is largely determined by their training. Biotics must develop conscious control over their nervous system, sending specific electrical impulses to element 0 nodules embedded in their nerves. They are taught to use their implants and amps with biofeedback devices and physical mnemonics. Specific gestures or muscle movements fire the proper sequence of nerves to activate a certain skill. Conetics Industries pioneered biotic training with the Biotic Acclimation and Temperance Training Program. Although BAAT did not achieve the desired results, many techniques taught are still used today. Many human think tanks are trying to develop some form of biotic super collider. Most are benign efforts to create more flexible troops. Others Others, less publicly known, are unapologetic attempts to create Nietzschean Superman. Someone hasn't read their Nietzsche, if they think that's what a Nietzschean Superman is. Communications methodology. As the population of the galaxy increases and new worlds are settled, timely access for home users and frontier settlements with underdeveloped communication infrastructures is a growing problem. To ameliorate bandwidth issues, a sophisticated array of data caches and virtual intelligence search agent programs are available. When a user submits a query, it is first routed to the data cache on their colony or star system. At the cache, the user's search agent VI collates mountains of locally stored data to find the desired material. If the information is not available locally, the query is passed along to neighboring systems and then outward in an expanding network. VI search agents in those systems replicate the search. If the desired information is found, it is compressed into a burst file and queued for transmission to the source system. The burst is assigned a priority based on the number of queries for it. The greater the number of queries, the higher the priority. When a new solar system is first connected to the net, a selection of the most popular data is installed locally. Though storage hardware is cheap, the capacity required to hold all the data produced every day by trillions of people on hundreds of worlds is not trivial. It's not economical to store local copies of all the data available on obscure topics just in case. As colonies mature, older and less popular chunks of data filter into them as a result of queries and are placed in the local archive. Searches for obscure topics are increasingly likely to produce instant results as the archive grows. Upgrades? We've read that one, right? Have we read everything then? Wow. Right, so weapons and armor equipment. Technology. Ships and vehicles. That was a long one. Planets and locations. Humanity and the Systems Alliance. Citadel and Galactic Government. Non-council races. Extinct races. And council races. And in primary?
50. In the early 2160s. In the early 2160s, the Alliance began aggressive colony. After the Geth, the Citadel is the home world. Pharos is a habitable world. Faster than light. Biotics is the combat hard.
We got everything. Alright, that was a long one, and I've read for a long time now. Time to rest my voice. Thanks for watching.